Hey everybody, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm actually going to be changing things up a little today. I'm just going to be narrating some Reddit stories that I found. Some of them are creepy, some of them are paranormal, some of them are just plain disturbing, but all of them sent a chill up my spine. So I hope that you enjoy this. Give it a like if you do, and let me know if you want to see more of this. Still traumatized by the things I witnessed when my grandma was dying. I grew up with my grandma and lived with her most of my life, and her house always freaked me out because weird things happened. It's not like the house was old, no one had ever lived there previously, and it wasn't the typical scary house you think of when you think of a haunted house. I have my theories, but that's for another time, I suppose. Anyways, everyone in my family who stayed there has their own stories of things they've seen or heard, including myself. Some examples of what I experienced were hearing footsteps outside my door in the middle of the night, hearing someone in the master bedroom walking around and turning the sink on when I was the only one home. When I was young, I was sneaking downstairs to grab a snack and turned the corner to go downstairs and saw a little girl sitting on a big box we had at the bottom of the stairs. Seeing figures of people on the walls moving around, and the list goes on. These things happened throughout my life and were spaced out occurrences, so I tried to just ignore it all the best I could. But what I experienced when my grandma was dying was some of the most intense things I've ever witnessed. My grandma had breast cancer. Eventually, it spread throughout her body, and she lost the battle. They put her on hospice, and we set up her living room for her to stay in so we could take care of her. The last week of her life is when things started getting really weird. I would be sitting on the couch next to her bed and see people in the corner of my eye walking past the doorway in the hallway, even when it was just me and her in the house. And when other people were there, they saw it too. There were times she would be looking up to the ceiling or at the walls and smile, like she was looking at someone she knew. Another time, my whole family was on the couch just being with her, and the lights in the room went out, and my grandma smiled and said, "It'll come back on," and right when she said that, it did. While these occurrences were starting to happen frequently, it was just little things like that. But then the last few days of her life, she started declining more, so we bought a baby monitor with a camera to watch her when we weren't in the room to make sure she didn't try and leave the bed. She kept trying to do things on her own and would fall. Well, one night my sister and I were upstairs in her bedroom talking, and we looked at the monitor screen, and I instantly started crying from what I saw. It's hard to describe what we saw. The only thing that comes close to what it looked like was a mix of a gremlin and golem. It felt so off. We watched it almost like crawl/jump up on her bed. She was asleep, but it seemed like she knew it was there because she made a movement with her hand like she was hitting it away, and once she did that, it left. My sister went downstairs to check on her. She was still sleeping and nothing was there. It was one of the scariest things I've ever seen in my life, and even after 6 years, just the thought of it makes the hair on my arms stand up, and my eyes begin to tear up. It's not just because of how scary it looked, but because of the way it made me feel. Even through the monitor, you could feel its presence and you could feel it was not good, whatever it was. The next night, my sister and I were back up in her bedroom watching a movie, and my sister looked at the monitor and studied it for a second, and told me to look at it, which after what I had already witnessed, I was terrified to even look. But I did, and clear as day you could see a head behind my grandma, which looked like how she looked at the time, bald, sick, etc. So we took a picture of the monitor screen this time, and we zoomed in to see what it was, and we noticed above that head was my uncle's face. You could see his features and could easily recognize it was him if you knew him. He was my grandma's son who died a few years back from cancer. While I don't really believe in God and I'm not sure where I stand on the afterlife, even after all my experiences, it was a feeling of relief seeing this after the horror I saw the night before. Almost like him saying, "It's okay, I got her." I have no idea what the head was behind her. My sister thinks it could be her starting to leave her body. It did look like it was her just watching her body lay there. A couple days later, she had passed away. For the next months, we stayed there to pack up her house and sell it, and while there were some weird occurrences from time to time, that was pretty normal for the house, and it seemed like all the insane activity that occurred while she was dying had left with her. But I will never forget the things I saw in that house during that time, and even as I'm writing all of this out, I have goosebumps. The man I saw through my night vision scope. I'm a hunter. I like to hunt wild boar specifically. Though I have been deer hunting and have been known to get a turkey for Thanksgiving, I mostly hunt boar. For those of you that don't know, boar are a big problem in the United States. A sow can have 2 litters a year, and it's not uncommon for a litter to consist of 10 or more pigs. Given that pigs eat anything and everything, it's not hard to see why the Department of Fish and Wildlife makes it legal to hunt them with almost no restrictions. In my state, it's illegal to hunt most large mammals with night or thermal vision scopes, with the exception of boar and coyote. I'd been saving for a year, mostly fun money. It's hard to explain to your wife that a scope that costs literally twice as much as the rifle I was mounting on it was worth it. But I did it. I took it to a range and sighted it in. There was an area that was peppered with boar activity that I knew would be perfect for a night hunt. It was easily accessible with my truck, with easy to find spots that I could set up in that overlooked a large, easy to navigate clearing. The night started uneventful, mostly me tinkering with my new toy, cycling through the settings. I was a little impatient. I'd spotted multiple deer, but they were out of season, and like I mentioned earlier, my current setup wasn't legal for deer. I moved to another spot I'd seen days earlier that probably wasn't much better than my first, but it gave me something to do and a new angle to look around with my new scope. After an hour or so of glassing the area, it dawned on me. The spot doesn't have much animal activity at all. No rabbit or owls. The deer that I'd seen were hundreds of yards from where I was. Why was this pocket of land so dead at night but lively in the day? I'd set up around 10 p.m. and it was about 2 a.m. when I started to think about packing up. Maybe setting up a target before I left and taking some practice shots. I heard a crunch come from the direction I came before. I panned my scope over and saw the silhouette of a small bear pushing through the bushes. It's important to note that my scope isn't exactly night vision. It's a thermal scope, kind of like a black and white version of what you see in the Predator movies. I adjusted my range and zoomed in a little. I remember jolting a little when I saw that it wasn't really a bear, it was a man. Because he was so low and hunched over, I thought I was looking at a young bear. Is that a game warden? It couldn't be. I would have seen the headlights coming up the road from where I was perched. And where could he have walked from? It was 30 miles away from anything and on public lands. I was about to call out when I adjusted my sights and noticed he was naked. No shoes, pants, or anything. I remember being disturbed by his movements, like a squirrel or something. Twitchy and grabby at the foliage, sniffing around and palming the tree. Was that my tree? The one I'd been leaning against earlier? The thought terrified me. Could he smell me? Then he did something I still have nightmares about today. He squatted and placed his hands in the dirt between his feet and stared straight up like a dog mid-howl. And I heard it. A voice coming from that direction. A very compelling female voice. "Help! I'm lost." There was a long pause, but neither of us moved a muscle. The center of my sights was trained at the dirt in front of his feet. I couldn't bring myself to aim directly at another person. It went against everything I'd been taught about firearms. Were they lost? Was this some guy that had gone crazy out here? Why was his voice so feminine? That's when I called bullshit. Not only could he walk, when I first saw him, he was traversing the land with ease for a naked person. So good I mistook him for a bear. That's a trap. This guy is trying to lure me to him with a damsel in distress routine. Luckily, the lack of activity before had caused me to pack up most of my gear. I think I may have left behind a hat and a sitting pad, but I didn't give a shit in that moment. I took my eyes in for a moment to get my pack on. I buckled my chest strap and scrambled for my rifle. To my horror, he was in the same position, but his face was staring in my direction, and I swear I saw him smile. The thermal scope has an effect that makes animals' eyes appear white. How the hell had he heard me get up and put my gear on? He must have easily been 150 yards away. Off! I screamed in that direction. He stood upright and it hit me how tall and skinny he was. Easily 6 feet and very lean. He took a couple of long strides in my direction and I instinctively sent a round sailing above his head into the tree line. He was freaky as hell, but he hadn't really threatened me. What would I tell the cops? I was unwilling and unready to shoot someone. He stopped dead in his tracks and hunched down on all fours. "The next one will you up." Go away! He stayed on all fours, and this time I had my sights trained on the center of him. His eyes were just above the grass like a large cat or something. I was trying to stop my trembling and knew that my voice had cracked a little on that last warning. I was terrified. That standoff probably only lasted a minute or two, maybe less, but it felt like forever. In an instant, he bolted left toward the tree line opposite the road. So much for not being able to walk. I could barely keep him in my scope, he was moving so fast. He disappeared into the bush and I sent another bullet sailing high in his direction. I racked another round and tried to pocket that mag and swap for a fresh one, but I dropped it and didn't bother looking for it. I wasn't far from my truck and I wanted to get out of there. I could hear him in the distance, yelling this weird sound that could have been a laugh or a cry. I scrambled up the trail and arrived at my truck breathless. I tossed my gear into the cab but kept the rifle in the passenger seat and sped off. For the longest time, I told that story from the perspective of having spotted some deranged crackhead living off the land like some kind of caveman. I reported it to Fish and Game, but all they did was scold me for hunting at night alone. Never received an update. It wasn't until I told the story at a camping trip that my nephew told me about wendigos, rakes, and skinwalkers. My story scared the piss out of him because the spot we were camping was technically the same forest I'd seen the bastard, just 50 miles east of it. He was so spooked his mom, my cousin, had to take him home. She was really pissed. I've gone down the rabbit hole on these scary stories. I'm not saying what I saw was definitely a wendigo or something else. I'm saying that if such a thing exists, I may have dodged quite the bullet that night. Or maybe it was just a tweaker being Donnie Thornberry in the middle of the night. Either way, I thought I'd share. My brother is creepy. Help. Okay, so my brother is really creepy. We have about a 3-year age gap. When we were younger, he used to scare the shit out of me. My parents used to just think it was kids being kids, but as we got older it would get worse. He used to walk out of the kitchen with a knife and just stare at me with it. My parents would never believe it when I would say something. As we continued to grow older, he became more violent, as in he used to try to fight me, but it wouldn't just be play fighting, there would be actual punches and kicks involved, and since I was smaller, I would come out with bruises. But he eventually grew more touchier, like he would brush up against me just to touch my lower back. At first, I just thought it was an accident, but he just kept going lower. Eventually, I caught on that it wasn't an accident. I always told him to stop, but he didn't. So I eventually started yelling at him to stop. He did for a while, but still here and there he would do it. Recently, as in like 2 months ago, when I turned 18, I found a hidden camera in my bathroom. I instantly knew it was his. I took it and took out the SD card and put the SD card in my lockbox and hid the camera in my room. 2 days later, the camera was gone from my room, but I still have the SD card. About a month later, there was this new clock in the bathroom, and I just thought my mom bought it. But I checked it for cameras and didn't see any on the clock, but out of precaution, I always have it covered or unplugged. Last week, I found the old camera replaced with a new one. I asked my mom today if she was the one who bought the clock for the bathroom, and she said that she thought I bought it. So right away I went and checked it for a camera, and I found one. But that isn't the only weird thing. At night he paces up and down our hallway, most nights only for about a minute. Sometimes he likes to knock on my door or just stare at me when I'm not in my room. Right now I'm in the process of sweeping my room for cameras because I still have no idea how he found that camera I hid in my room, which literally freaks me out. I have no idea of what to do. I know I should probably tell my mom, but he gives me serious killer vibes. But I'm also saving to get my own apartment, so hopefully I can do that and just avoid him. I think my grandmother made a profit off of me as a kid. When I was a little one, my grandmother had kept poor company. She still does, and because of this and other things that have happened, I am now not in contact with her. However, when I was just a kid, my grandmother was my hero because she had a pool in her backyard and would take me to Disney World even during the school year, so I would be able to just not go to school. She bought me gifts and even got a cat at her house that I took care of. Sadly, the cat was given away after a year because she's a negligent owner and I was only 7 years old. All this to say, my grandmother bought my love through these extravagant gifts. and since I was just a tot, I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Now, the actual story is pertaining to the company my grandmother kept. She herself was a self-proclaimed born-again Christian, so I suppose it made sense that she chose these people as her friends. I didn't realize this at the time, but she seemed to have a thing for child predators, to the point where she even hung out with them while I was visiting her for the weekend. Now, I have been told that I was an extremely adorable little girl. Bright blonde ringlet curls, grey eyes. I even had several photos of when I was a kid modeling for children's clothes. So, whenever I would visit, there was always a creepo visiting her, and she would always leave me alone with him to run errands. This would take upwards of an hour. Nothing explicitly sexual would happen, I don't think. Then again, I could be blocking out these memories since it started off when I was about 5 years old. No, these men would bite, nibble, lick, and sniff my feet of all things. I don't know why I didn't say anything sooner, but eventually I told my mother that I don't like it when grandma leaves me alone with the weird men. They would always lick my feet, and I didn't like it. It wasn't long after that I didn't see my grandmother for nearly 10 years, so yeah, I'm pretty sure my grandmother sold off my little kid feet to these weird pedophiles. And yes, I'm in therapy because of the things she allowed to happen to me and because of other things she's done. The man in my attic. So I, 24-year-old male, have lived on my own for about 2 years now. I have a very small bungalow I'm able to pretty comfortably afford. In this bungalow, I have an attic area. At a guess, I'd say it's about 5 by 5 meters in size, and you can only really stand in there in the very center. Anyway, I work the night shift at a factory. I basically just sit on my phone all night, so I usually get in at around 8 a.m. I was coming home last Thursday during a heavy storm, and I got into the house and just went to sleep. When I woke up, I went to my phone and saw that I was so tired that I didn't check my notifications. I have a Ring camera outside my door, which shows me anyone who would have come to my room. I saw that it had been tripped at 7:42 a.m. I got into the house at around 8:10 to 8:15 a.m. I checked the video and saw that it was a man. He was pressed right up to the door and was fumbling around with the handle. He did this for about 10 seconds until he spotted the camera. Once he did, he very quickly scuttled away. This unsettled me, but it didn't entirely creep me out or anything. I got up to go make some food and discovered something in my kitchen. My back window was open. I of course instantly began having the thoughts of a home intruder, but slowly chilled out as I convinced myself I had left it open. The rest of the day consisted of this, just noticing small things that didn't seem right and scaring myself. All up until a point, I leave for the shift at 10 p.m. and I was watching some TV at 9 o'clock-ish. I spotted something that made my heart leap into my throat. Out of the corner of my eye I could see it. My attic entrance was slowly being slid open. I can so vividly remember that I began questioning my sanity. Surely I was just hallucinating or something. I looked over at it and absolutely saw something that made me so much more scared. I saw fingers wrap around the hatch and begin moving it more. I didn't know what to do. I could feel the panic beginning to really get to me, and I wasn't sure if I should leave the house and call the police, or if I should try and yell at whoever was up there. I chose a mixture of both. I began dialing 999 and ran to my bedroom where I could lock the door. As soon as I began running, I heard the hatch get almost teared off with the speed they moved it, and I arrived at my bedroom door. I looked down the corridor and watched for a second, seeing only a little slice of blackness up in my attic, and I saw the human hands still holding onto the sides of my ceiling. I yelled, "Whoever is there, I'm calling the police and I have a gun. I do not own a gun. If you take a step out of there, I will shoot you." The adrenaline was really making my hands and voice shake, but I tried sounding as tough as I could. Then I saw something that I truly do not think I will ever forget. The hand slipped back into the dark and then he dropped down. I slammed my door shut and locked it as quickly as I could. The call went through and I was able to get on the line with the police and they dispatched officers to my house. I told them I didn't know if the man was armed or not, and the dispatcher told me to stay on the line. I heard the man walking up to my door and rattling the door handle. He also seemingly went through my cupboards in my kitchen as I heard a lot of commotion there. Truth be told, I don't know why he stayed. I would have just left the house, but he stayed right up until the police came in and arrested him. Apparently he was a homeless man and was armed with a knife from my kitchen, and had recently been seen in the area trying to get into other houses. Truth be told, I'm very frightened to sleep still. I now sleep with my bedroom door locked and all my windows closed. I also sleep with a knife under my pillow. I know that this is unlikely to ever happen again, but I just cannot forget the way he dropped down from my attic. So that's the story of the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. I made this account to tell it because I feel like if I write it down like this, it will feel less like a real thing and more just like a story. And those were the stories. If you have a similar story, please don't hesitate to drop it in the comments down below. I would love to read it. Also, let me know which one was your favorite. If you did like this video, please don't forget to give it a like, and if you really like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel to receive more content like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.